The great hall of Thornhall Keep had never felt so cold. Seren stood at the center of the marble floor, her bare feet numb against stone polished by centuries of footsteps. The cold seeped up through her bones, settling into her marrow like a promise of worse things to come. Above her, chandeliers dripped with crystals that scattered afternoon light across the assembled crowd like frozen tears. Hundreds of eyes watched her from every direction, hungry, mocking, waiting for blood. Every noble family in the Valdrus realm had gathered for this moment. Her moment of judgment. Wolfless. The word echoed from somewhere in the crowd, followed by snickering. She's completely wolfless. Seren kept her eyes fixed on the floor, counting the veins in the marble. 23. 24. If she counted high enough, perhaps this would end. Look at her. Lady Vishara's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade wrapped in silk. 21 years old and not a single shift. The bloodline is clearly corrupted. Seren's hands trembled at her sides. She could feel Vishara circling her, could smell the expensive perfume that failed to mask the bitter scent of cruelty underneath. And yet, Vishara continued, her tone dripping with false sympathy, she somehow believed my brother Kalen would actually mate with her. A defective Omega with delusions of grandeur. Laughter rippled through the hall. Someone threw a piece of fruit that splattered against Seren's shoulder, leaving a wet stain on the thin gray dress they had forced her to wear. The dress of the accused. High above them all, seated on a throne carved from black mountain oak, the Alpha King watched in silence. Theron's face revealed nothing. His amber eyes moved across the scene with cold detachment, as if observing insects rather than his own subjects. He was younger than the previous king, barely 30, but there was something ancient in his stillness. She bewitched him, Lord Aldrich declared, Vishara's father, stepping forward with theatrical outrage. My son, heir to the second greatest house in Valdrus, ensnared by this wolf-less creature's manipulations. The engagement must be formally dissolved, and she must be punished. The crowd roared its approval. Seren finally raised her head. In the gallery above, she could see Meera's small face pressed between the railings. Her little sister, only 8 years old, watching her humiliation with wide, terrified eyes. Meera was the reason Seren had agreed to Lord Aldrich's arrangement in the first place. Marriage to his son meant protection, meant Meera would never go hungry again. Now it meant nothing. Speak, girl. Lord Aldrich gripped her chin, forcing her face upward. Confess your schemes before the realm. I have nothing to confess, Seren whispered. Your son approached me. He made promises. I believed him. The slap came fast and hard, snapping her head to the side. Seren tasted blood where her teeth had cut her cheek. Liar, Aldrich spat. Wolfless Omega is worse than useless. You are an abomination. Something stirred deep in Seren's chest. Something that had been sleeping for 21 years. Perhaps we should brand her, Vishara suggested sweetly, so everyone knows what she is. Brand her! Brand her! The chant spread like wildfire. Seren's vision blurred. The stirring in her chest had become a burning, spreading through her limbs like molten silver. Her bones began to ache. Not now, she thought desperately. Please, not now. But the fire kept growing. Hold her down, Aldrich commanded. Guards seized her arms. Someone was heating an iron in the great hearth, its tip glowing orange. The burning inside Seren became unbearable. Her knees buckled. She heard herself screaming, though she could not feel her throat. Every bone in her body was breaking and reforming. Every muscle was tearing itself apart and knitting back together in new configurations. Her skin felt too tight, then too loose, then like it belonged to someone else entirely. What is happening to her? Someone shouted. Get back! Another voice cried. She is cursed. The guards released her, stumbling backward. Seren collapsed to her hands and knees, her body convulsing with a transformation she had never experienced. White-hot agony lanced through her spine, her fingers elongated into claws. Fur erupted across her skin in waves of silver and white. And then, suddenly, it was over. Seren opened eyes that saw the world in crystalline clarity. She rose on 4 powerful legs and caught her reflection in the polished floor. Silver. Her wolf was silver. Not gray, not white, but pure gleaming silver, as if moonlight itself had been woven into fur. Her eyes blazed with pale gold fire. The great hall had gone utterly silent. Lady Vishara had turned the color of curdled milk. Lord Aldrich's mouth hung open, the brand forgotten in his hand. Throughout the crowd, nobles were falling to their knees. Impossible, someone breathed. The silver wolves died out 300 years ago. Seren turned her massive head toward the throne. The Alpha King had risen, his amber eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her wolf spirit want to both flee and stand her ground. Slowly, deliberately, Theron descended the steps. The crowd parted before him like water. He stopped mere feet from where Seren stood, her silver form nearly as tall as his human one. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the Alpha King spoke, his voice carrying to every corner of the silent hall. Seize Lord Aldrich and Lady Vishara. They have committed crimes against a daughter of the Silver Moon bloodline. Anyone who has raised a hand against her today will answer for it. The hall erupted into chaos. Nobles shouting, guards moving, Aldrich and Vishara screaming protests as they were dragged away. But Seren heard none of it, because the Alpha King was still staring at her, and in his amber gaze, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Recognition, hunger, and a possessiveness so primal it stole her breath. Her legs gave out beneath her, the transformation reversing as violently as it had begun. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was Theron catching her trembling body in his arms, murmuring words she could not understand. Seren woke to the scent of cedar and winter frost. For a moment, she simply lay still, eyes closed, trying to piece together where she was. The surface beneath her was impossibly soft, nothing like the thin straw mattress in her servants' quarters. Silk sheets whispered against her bare arms. A fire crackled nearby. Then the memories crashed back. The trial. The brand. The silver wolf that had erupted from her body after 21 years of silence. Serene's eyes snapped open. She was lying in a bed larger than her entire former room, its posts carved from dark wood and hung with curtains of deep burgundy velvet. The chamber was vast, stone walls softened by tapestries depicting wolves running beneath silver moons. This was not a servant's room. This was a room fit for royalty. Serene sat up too quickly, and the world tilted. Her body felt wrong, heavy and light at the same time. When she looked down, she found a silk nightdress she did not recognize. Someone had undressed her, bathed her, put her in this bed. You are awake. The voice came from shadows near the fireplace. Seren's heart lurched as a figure rose from a chair, stepping into candlelight. Alpha King Theron moved like a predator, all-controlled power and lethal grace. His amber eyes reflected firelight like molten gold. Where am I? Seren's voice came out as a rasp. Where is my sister? The child is safe. She is being cared for in quarters nearby. Recovered from what? The Alpha King tilted his head. You truly do not know what you are, do you? I am an Omega, a wolfless one, apparently no longer. You are far more than that. He moved closer until he stood beside her bed. Your wolf is silver. Do you understand what that means? I understand that silver wolves are extinct. Were extinct. Theron corrected. Until tonight. The Silver Moon bloodline was thought to have been wiped out in the purging 3 centuries ago, hunted down and slaughtered by those who feared their power. Saren shook her head. I have no gift. Until tonight I had no wolf at all. You are somebody now. The Silver Wolves were guardians, healers. Their presence alone could strengthen an entire pack. They were also, he hesitated, the only wolves capable of mating with alpha bloodlines without being consumed by them. Saren felt the blood drain from her face. Mating? Theron's jaw tightened. You will have many questions. For now, you need rest. Your first shift has damaged your body more than you realize. As if his words had summoned the awareness, Saren suddenly felt the wrongness inside her. A deep ache in her bones, a tremor in her muscles. When she lifted her hand, her fingers were shaking violently. What is happening to me? Your wolf woke too fast. 21 years of suppression released in a single moment. Your human body is struggling to adapt. Will I die? The question hung between them. Theron did not answer immediately, and his silence was more terrifying than any words. Rest, he finally said. I have summoned healers. He turned to leave, but Saren's voice stopped him. Why do you care? What am I to you? The Alpha King looked back over his shoulder. In the firelight, his eyes seemed to burn. That, he said quietly, is what I am trying to determine. The door closed behind him. Hours passed. Saren drifted in and out of consciousness, plagued by fever dreams. She saw silver wolves running through forests that no longer existed. She felt phantom teeth at her throat. When she woke again, it was to arguing outside her door. She must be moved to the sanctuary, an unfamiliar voice insisted. The transformation sickness will kill her within days. And risk exposing her to those who would see her dead? Theron's voice, sharp with fury. Half the realm witnessed her shift. By now, every pack will be sending assassins. Then what would you have us do, my king? Silence. Then Theron spoke, his voice so low Saren could barely hear. Prepare the binding ritual. My king, you cannot possibly mean I gave you an order. The door opened, and Theron entered alone, carrying a small vial filled with liquid that gleamed like captured starlight. You heard, he said. It was not a question. What is the binding ritual? Theron sat on the edge of her bed. This close, she could smell him. Cedar and frost and something wild underneath. Her wolf stirred restlessly beneath her skin. It is an ancient rite. A temporary bond between wolves that allows one to share strength with another. Temporary? It can be broken once you have stabilized, but while it lasts, you will feel what I feel. You will sense my presence always, and I will have certain instincts toward you that may be difficult to control. What kind of instincts? Protective ones. The words seemed to cost him. Possessive ones. And if I refuse? Then you will be dead before the week ends. Saren stared at him, this king who had watched her humiliation with cold eyes and then caught her when she fell, who had imprisoned her tormentors and carried her to his own chambers. Why would you do this for me? Theron's hand moved before she could react, his fingers brushing her cheek with a gentleness that seemed foreign to him. At his touch, her wolf surged forward, yearning toward him with an intensity that frightened her. Because, he said, his voice rough, I have been waiting for you for a very long time. Before she could respond, he uncorked the vial and pressed it to her lips. Drink, and pray we both survive what comes next. The liquid touched her tongue, and the world dissolved into silver fire. The flames were everywhere. Saren could not tell if she was burning, alive, or being reborn. The starlight liquid had ignited something in her blood, and now she was floating in an ocean of pure sensation. She felt Theron's presence like a second heartbeat pounding alongside her own. His emotions crashed into her, fierce and overwhelming. Protectiveness, hunger, fear, longing. And underneath it all, a loneliness so vast it made her want to weep. When the flames receded, Seren found herself lying on the bed, gasping. Her body no longer trembled. The ache in her bones had faded. But something else had taken its place, an awareness that hummed beneath her skin. She knew, without looking, that Theron was slumped in the chair beside her bed. She could feel his exhaustion as if it were her own. "It worked," she said. "Yes, the bond has stabilized your wolf. For now." Seren sat up slowly. "I can feel you. Everything you feel. I warned you. You did not warn me about this." She pressed her hand to her chest, where his loneliness ached like an old wound. "Theron, how long have you been carrying this?" His jaw clenched. The binding was meant to share strength, not secrets. But it did both. The Alpha King rose with predatory abruptness, putting distance between them. "My history is not your concern. Once you have fully recovered, the bond will be dissolved, and you will be free to leave." "Leave to where?" "My former master wanted to brand me. Half the nobles would gladly see me dead, and I have a sister who depends on me. Arrangements will be made." "Arrangements?" She laughed bitterly. "You bind yourself to me, pour your life force into my veins, let me feel every hidden corner of your heart. And then you speak of arrangements?" Theron turned. The candlelight caught the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands had curled into fists. "You do not want to know me, Seren. I am not the hero of whatever story you are imagining. I am trying to understand why a king would sacrifice his solitude to save a servant girl he has never met." She felt his control crack, a wave of emotion flooding through the connection. Want, need, and beneath it, desperate hope. "Because," he said, the word torn from him, "I knew your mother." Seren froze. "What?" "21 years ago, a silver wolf came to my father's court. She was wounded, hunted, carrying a child she refused to abandon. My father turned her away, said harboring her would bring war. My mother was a silver wolf? She was the last of them." His eyes found hers, and the guilt in them was ancient. "I was 9 years old. I watched from the battlements as the hunting party caught her at the forest's edge. I watched them kill her, and I watched them take the infant from her dead arms." Seren's legs buckled. Theron caught her, his arms wrapping around her with an instinct that felt older than thought. "They were supposed to kill you as well," he continued, "but someone had mercy. They left you at Lord Aldrich's estate with no name, no history. Aldrich knew what I was. He kept you suppressed. Herbs in your food, binding rituals woven into your bedding. Everything designed to keep your wolf asleep forever. He planned to use you as a bargaining chip, a connection to the legendary bloodline without the threat of its power. But then I shifted and destroyed every scheme he had built." Seren pulled back enough to look at his face. She felt his emotions churning, guilt and hope, and something fierce that made her wolf rise eagerly. "You saved me because of your guilt." "I saved you because it was right." He paused. "But I bound myself to you for other reasons." "What reasons?" His hand rose to cup her face, and electricity raced through the bond. His emotions flooded her, raw and unfiltered. He wanted her. Not just her power, not just her bloodline, but her. The woman who had refused to confess to crimes she did not commit. The Omega who had looked at him without fear. "Theron," she breathed, "I know this is too fast. I know you have every reason to distrust me." She kissed him. It was clumsy and desperate, but the moment their lips touched, the bond blazed to life with an intensity that stole her breath. She felt his shock, his hunger, the way his wolf rose to meet hers, two spirits recognizing each other across centuries of loss. When they broke apart, his eyes had changed. The amber had been swallowed by molten gold. Dangerous, he growled. This is dangerous. I know. She kissed him again anyway. This time, he did not hold back. His arms crushed her against him, his mouth claiming hers. She felt his walls crumbling, 25 years of guilt and loneliness pouring into her. Mine, his wolf snarled through the connection, and something deep inside her snarled back. Yours. When he pulled away, his expression had changed, wonder and fear and tenderness. This was not supposed to happen, he whispered. What was supposed to happen? I was supposed to save you, dissolve the bond, and let you go. And now? His laugh was broken. Now I do not think I could let you go if my life depended on it. Before she could respond, pounding came at the chamber door. My king, Lord Aldrich has escaped, and he has taken the child. Seren's blood turned to ice. Meera. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Where? Theron's voice had gone cold, all traces of tenderness vanishing beneath the Alpha King. The Eastern Tower, my king. Lord Aldrich had allies among the servants. Seren pushed past them, bare feet slapping against cold stone. She did not know where she was going, only that she had to find Meera. Seren, wait. Theron caught her arm. You do not know the castle. Then show me. She is 8 years old. She is all I have. He nodded once, then shifted. The transformation was nothing like hers had been. Where her shift had been agony and chaos, his was fluid grace, his human form flowing into a massive black wolf as naturally as water finding its course. Follow, his voice echoed in her mind. Seren tried to shift, reaching for the silver wolf inside her. But her body refused. The wolf was there, pacing beneath her skin, but the doorway between forms remained locked. I cannot. I do not know how to call her. Theron's wolf pressed against her hip in a gesture of comfort. Run. I will carry you if you fall. They ran. They burst from the castle into night air. The world was overwhelming. Scents layered upon scents, sounds cascading from every direction. She could smell fear and horses and torch smoke. And beneath it all, faint but unmistakable, Meera's scent. There. She pointed toward the forest's edge. I can smell her. They found them in a clearing half a mile into the forest. Aldrich stood with his back to an enormous oak, its gnarled roots spreading across the ground like grasping fingers. One arm was wrapped around Meera's throat, a silver dagger pressed to her pulse point. His fine clothes were torn, his face wild with desperation and hatred. In the moonlight, his eyes glittered with madness. Stay back, he snarled as Theron's wolf emerged from the trees. One more step and I open her throat. I have nothing left to lose. Meera's eyes found Seren's. There were no tears, no screaming, just quiet terror that made Seren's heart crack down the center. Her little sister, so small and fragile against the bulk of the man who held her. Let her go. Your quarrel is with me, not a child. My quarrel is with your entire cursed bloodline. Aldrich's laugh was ragged. Do you know what your mother did? She killed my father before he could finish his work. When I found you on our doorstep, I thought the gods had delivered justice. You kept me as a slave. I kept you contained. The dagger pressed harder and a thin line of red appeared on Meera's skin. 21 years of suppression, and it worked? Until you ruined everything. Something shifted inside Seren. Not her wolf. Something older. Release my sister, she said, and her voice resonated with power she did not recognize. And I will let you live. You cannot even shift. What threat are you? The power rose without permission. It flooded through her veins like liquid moonlight, spilling from her skin in waves of silver radiance. The clearing filled with light so bright Aldrich cried out, throwing up his arm. In that moment, Theron moved. The black wolf slammed into Aldrich with enough force to send them crashing into underbrush. The dagger went flying. Meera stumbled free. "Seren!" Her sister's voice broke through. She caught Meera in her arms, pulling the trembling girl against her chest. The silver light faded, leaving Seren dizzy but whole. "I have you," she whispered into Meera's hair. "You are safe." Theron had shifted back to human form, standing over Aldrich's unconscious body. "He will stand trial," he said flatly, "for his crimes against you, your mother, the Silver Moon bloodline." Seren looked up at him. He said there were others. His father hunted silver wolves. There must be more who share his beliefs. There are. And tonight, we announce to all of them exactly where to find you. Before he could continue, a horn sounded in the distance, then another, and another. Theron's face went pale. That is the warning signal. The realm is under attack. The castle was chaos when they returned. Servants ran through corridors. Guards shouted orders. The smell of smoke hung heavy in the air. Theron had carried Meera on his back in wolf form. Now Seren held her sister's hand as they followed the Alpha King through the mayhem. "Report!" Theron barked at a captain. "3 packs have crossed our borders simultaneously, my king. The Thornwood wolves from the east, the Blackmere from the north, and the Ashbourne from the south." Theron stopped. "The Ashbourne are our allies." "Were, my king. Their alpha says harboring a silver wolf is an act of war against all packs who remember the old times." "The old times? You mean the genocide?" Seren felt blood drain from her face. 3 armies, all coming for her. "This is my fault," she whispered. "No." Theron gripped her shoulders. "This is the fault of small men who fear what they do not understand. You did nothing wrong by existing. But if I left, you would be hunted down within a fortnight. The silver wolves were not purged because they were dangerous. They were purged because they were powerful. Because they could heal wounds no one else could heal. Because frightened alphas could not stand anyone having power they could not control." She felt the depth of his conviction through the bond. "What will you do?" "I will fight. I will defend my realm and everyone in it." "Let me help." "Your power is unstable. You cannot shift at will. Until you understand what you are capable of, you are a liability on a battlefield." His voice was gentle but firm. The words stung, even though she knew they were true. "Then what would you have me do?" "There is a place. The Silvervale Grove, deep in the heart of the realm. It was sacred to the silver wolves before the purging. You will be safe there." "You want to send me away?" "I want to keep you alive." He cupped her face, amber eyes burning into hers. "If I fall in battle, the bond will dissolve. You will take Meera to the grove and build a life there." "I do not want freedom." The words burst from her. "I want you." Something cracked in his expression. She felt it. A wall crumbling, hope and fear and love tangled together. Seren. Her name was a prayer on his lips. "Come back to me. Promise me you will come back." He kissed her. It was desperate, fierce, a claiming that left her breathless and aching for more. His hands cradled her face as if she were something precious, something he could not bear to lose. She tasted salt and realized one of them was crying, perhaps both. "I will find you," he growled against her mouth. "No matter what happens, across any distance, through any darkness, I will find you." Then he pulled away, and the loss was physical pain. Her body swayed toward him, reaching for warmth that was no longer there. Captain, escort Seren and the child to the Silvervale Grove. Guard them with your life. Theron looked at her one last time. She felt everything he could not say through the bond, every promise, every fear. Then he shifted into his black wolf and ran toward the sound of war. Seren watched him disappear, one hand pressed to her chest where the bond thrummed with the echo of his heartbeat. He will come back, Meera said quietly. I know he will. Seren wished she shared her sister's certainty. 3 weeks, 21 days of silence, of waiting, of wondering if each sunrise would bring news of Theron's death. The Silvervale Grove was everything he had promised. Ancient trees with bark that shimmered like moonlight, their branches reaching toward the sky like supplicants in prayer. A stream that sang with voices almost too faint to hear, carrying melodies from a time before memory. Ruins of what might once have been a temple, now softened by moss and time, columns worn smooth by centuries of wind and rain. And everywhere, the lingering presence of silver wolves who had walked these paths centuries ago. Seren could feel them, not as ghosts, but as echoes, impressions left in the very stones and soil. When she walked the ancient paths at night, she sometimes thought she could hear paw steps beside her own, feel the brush of phantom fur against her legs. But the peace of the grove could not touch the ache inside her. It had started the moment Theron disappeared. A hollow feeling in her chest, as if someone had carved out a piece of her. Then the dreams began. Every night she saw him, Theron fighting in mud and blood. Theron standing alone on a hilltop, his black wolf silhouetted against a burning sky. Theron calling her name across a distance she could not cross. She would wake gasping, feeling his emotions bleeding through the connection. Exhaustion, pain, a loneliness that matched her own. He was alive. The bond would have shattered if he had died. But he was suffering. You are fading, the grovekeeper said. Seren looked up from the stream. The keeper was an old woman, descended from a line that had served silver wolves for generations. I am fine. You are lying. I have seen binding bonds before. I know what happens when they are stretched too thin. What do you mean? The bond between you and the Alpha King was meant to be temporary. But bonds have a will of their own, especially bonds between true mates. True mates? We barely know each other. Your wolves know. The bond was supposed to dissolve once you stabilized. Instead, it has been growing, deepening, reaching for permanence. Is that why I feel this emptiness? The bond is incomplete. It wants to be finished. It wants you to claim him as fully as he has claimed you. But a bond stretched across such distance will eventually break. And when it does, it will take pieces of both of you. With it, Seren felt cold. How long? Weeks. Perhaps days. The keeper's voice softened. You have a choice. Let the bond dissolve and lose him forever, or go to him and complete what was started. He told me to stay safe. Safety is an illusion. Your mother spent her life running, hiding, and in the end, she still died. The old woman looked at her with pity. The only question is whether you want to die having lived or die having hidden. That night, the dreams were worse. She saw Theron on his knees in a circle of enemies, his black fur matted with blood. She heard him howl with such anguish it tore through the bond, and then she heard his voice, clear as if he were beside her. Seren. I am sorry. I cannot hold them any longer. She woke with his name on her lips and terrible certainty in her heart. He was dying. No. The word was a snarl. I will not let him die. She threw off her blankets and ran toward the grove's edge. Meera would be safe here. The keeper would watch over her. At the boundary she stopped. The forest stretched before her, dark and wild. She did not know the way. She could not shift. She was a liability. But she was also a silver wolf, the last of her kind. "Help me," she whispered to the grove, to her ancestors, to whatever power slept in her blood. "Please, help me save him." The wind stirred, the trees swayed, and deep inside her chest, something ancient finally woke. The transformation began before Seren understood what was happening. Silver fire raced through her veins, her bones shattered and reformed with agony that drove her to her knees. But this time was different. This time, the pain had purpose. She felt the grove's power flowing into her, the accumulated strength of every silver wolf who had ever walked these paths. Their voices whispered in her mind. "Rise, daughter of moonlight. Rise and claim what is yours." Seren screamed as her spine elongated. Her hands became paws. Fur erupted, gleaming like liquid starlight. The transformation was brutal and beautiful, tearing her apart and remaking her. When it was over, she stood on 4 legs that trembled but held firm. She was silver, pure, radiant silver, larger than she had been in the great hall. Her eyes blazed with pale gold fire. But more than that, she could feel the bond. It stretched before her like a thread of moonlight, leading through dark forest toward wherever Theron fought and bled. She could feel his heartbeat, faint and faltering. She could feel his pain. "Hold on," she sent through the bond. "I am coming." Then she ran. The forest blurred around her. Miles vanished beneath her paws. Rivers were leaped without thought. The grove's power sang in her blood, pushing her faster. She ran through night and into dawn. She ran until her muscles screamed and lungs burned. She ran until she could smell blood and smoke on the wind. The battlefield spread before her like a nightmare made flesh. Bodies lay scattered across churned mud, wolf and human forms, tangled together in the stillness of death. The 3 armies had converged on this valley, and the ground had drunk deep of their fury. The earth itself seemed to weep blood. Fires smoldered in patches, sending columns of gray smoke into the pale morning sky. Crows circled overhead, their harsh cries the only sound in a world gone silent. The air tasted of copper and ash, and at the center, surrounded by corpses of his enemies, Theron stood alone. No, not stood. Swayed. His black fur was matted with wounds too numerous to count. One front leg hung at a wrong angle. Blood dripped from a gash across his muzzle. But he was still on his feet, still facing the ring of enemies with bared teeth. The Ashborn Alpha stepped forward. Massive gray fur streaked with scars. "Surrender the Silver Wolf's location, and I will grant you a quick death." Theron's response was a snarl. "She is beyond your reach. Kill me if you must. I will tell you nothing." "Then you die for nothing." The Ashborn Alpha's muscles bunched. "The Silver Wolves are abominations. We will find her eventually." Theron laughed, broken and wet with blood. "You understand nothing. The Silver Wolves were never your enemies. They were your salvation. You murdered them out of fear, and called it righteousness." The Ashborn Alpha lunged. Seren did not think. She simply moved. Silver light exploded across the battlefield as she crashed into the gray wolf mid-leap, her jaws finding his throat and tearing. The Ashborn Alpha fell, blood steaming in cold morning air. For a moment, the entire battlefield froze. Then Seren turned to face the remaining enemies, and her wolf released a howl that shook the earth. It was not just sound, it was power, the accumulated strength of every silver wolf who had ever lived. The surviving attackers stumbled backward, some shifting involuntarily to human form. "The silver moon has returned," someone whispered. Seren stalked forward, her silver fur blazing with inner light. I am Seren, daughter of the last silver wolf, guardian of the Valdrus realm, and mate to your king." She let the words sink in. "You came here to destroy what you fear, but I am not your destruction. I am your mercy. Leave now, and you will live. Stay, and you will learn why your ancestors feared my bloodline." The wolves ran. They scattered like leaves before a storm, fleeing from the silver apparition that had appeared from nowhere to decimate their leaders. Seren did not watch them go. She was already moving toward Theron. He had collapsed the moment enemies fled. When she reached him, he was barely breathing, amber eyes flickering open. "You came," he whispered. "I told you." She shifted back to human form, kneeling in the mud beside him. "I want you. Not freedom. You." His wolf faded, leaving him human and shattered. Seren pressed her hands to his chest, feeling for the heartbeat growing weaker. "Hold on. Please, Theron." But his eyes were closing. She felt his life force guttering, like a candle in wind. "No, not like this." Seren reached for the power that had carried her across a realm. She reached for the grove, for her ancestors, for the gift that had made her kind legendary. And she found something she had not expected: the power to heal. Silver light poured from Seren's hands. It was not the aggressive blaze she had unleashed on the battlefield. This was gentler, warmer, a radiance that sank into Theron's broken body like sunlight into soil. She felt her own strength draining, exhaustion clawing at consciousness. But she did not stop, could not stop. "Come back to me," she whispered. "You promised you would find me." She felt something stir, a flicker of awareness, a spark. Then his hand closed around her wrist. "Seren?" His voice was barely audible, but his eyes were open, amber finding gold. "You should not have come. I should not have stayed away so long." She laughed through tears. "You were dying. I could feel it. I would have died gladly, knowing you were safe." "Then you are a fool. I was never going to be safe without you. The bond was killing me too." She felt his shock, then understanding, then emotion so intense it overwhelmed her. "The binding was supposed to dissolve," he said. "It did not want to. The Grove Keeper said bonds have a will of their own, especially bonds between true mates." True mates. He repeated the words like a man tasting something he had never believed he would experience. "Seren, I know." She silenced him with a kiss, soft and full of promises. "I felt everything, every emotion you tried to hide." When she pulled away, his eyes had changed. Amber shot through with gold, his wolf rising to meet hers. "Then you know what I want," he said, his voice dropping to a growl. "Tell me anyway." He sat up, movements careful but growing stronger. His hand cupped her face. "I want to complete the bond. I want to claim you properly. Not as a temporary measure, but as my mate, my equal, my queen." His forehead pressed against hers. "I want to spend whatever years we have fighting beside you, not for you." "Yes." The word burst from her. "Yes to all of it." Theron's control shattered. He kissed her with ferocity that left no room for doubt, hands tangling in her hair despite wounds not yet healed. She felt his wolf howling with triumph. "Mine. Finally. Completely mine." Seren's wolf rose to answer. She felt her canines elongating, felt ancient instinct demanding completion of what the binding ritual had started. "The battlefield is hardly romantic," Theron murmured against her throat. "I do not need romance. I need you. Now. Forever." His laugh was ragged. "Then take me." She did. Her teeth found the place where his neck met his shoulder. She bit down with supernatural strength, tasting his blood, feeling his life force mingle with her own. The bond exploded into completion. It was not gentle. It was not soft. It was a collision of two souls that had been reaching for each other across lifetimes, crashing together with all the force of destiny fulfilled. The world fell away, leaving only the two of them suspended in a universe of shared consciousness. She felt everything he was flood into her: his memories, his fears, his hopes, his love. She felt the lonely child who had watched her mother die from castle battlements, powerless to intervene. The guilty prince who had carried that weight for 21 years. The king who had built walls around his heart to survive, who had told himself he did not deserve love or happiness. And she let him feel her in return. The servant girl who had dreamed of belonging while scrubbing floors. The sister who would sacrifice anything for family. The wolf who had woken after 21 years of silence and refused to be caged ever again. The woman who had found her courage in the darkest moment and discovered she was never truly alone. When she finally released him, they were both gasping, both trembling, both changed. "My mate," Theron breathed, wonder and possession tangled in his voice. "My king," she answered. Then, with a smile, "My home." Wolves had emerged from the tree line, survivors of Theron's forces, drawn by the pulse of power. They gathered in a growing circle, eyes fixed on the silver wolf who knelt beside their king. One by one, they began to bow, not fearful submission, something older, recognition of what she was. "The Silver Moon bloodline has returned," a grizzled warrior said. "The prophecies spoke of this day, the healer queen who would unite the packs." "I am no queen," Seren started. "You are." Theron's hand found hers. "You became one the moment you claimed me." Seren looked at the bowing wolves, at the man beside her, at the silver light flickering around her hands. She thought of Meera in the grove. She thought of her mother, who had died protecting her. She thought of all the silver wolves slaughtered by fear. "I will try," she said softly, "for all of them." 1 month later, the great hall of Thornhall Keep was filled with wolves from every corner of the realm. Seren stood at Theron's side, silver hair crowned with moonflowers, simple white dress a deliberate contrast to the elaborate gowns of noble ladies who had once mocked her. Meera sat in the front row, beaming. "Lords and ladies of Valdrus," Theron announced, "you have come to witness the formal recognition of your queen. But more than that, you have come to witness the dawn of a new age." He turned to Seren. "The silver wolves were hunted to extinction because our ancestors feared their power. But fear is the enemy of wisdom. Seren has shown us another way. She healed our wounded. She united our fractured packs. She turned enemies into allies with mercy instead of force." He took her hand, raising it so the assembly could see their intertwined fingers. "She is not just my mate. She is the heart of this realm." The hall erupted into cheers. The sound was deafening, thunderous, a wave of approval that washed over Seren like warm water. Wolves howled. Nobles applauded. Somewhere, Meera was jumping up and down with excitement. But Seren barely heard any of it. She was looking at the spot where she had once stood in a gray dress, barefoot and humiliated, while nobles threw fruit and called her an abomination. The exact same marble floor, the exact same crystal chandeliers, the exact same watching eyes. But everything had changed. She had changed. "What are you thinking?" Theron murmured, leaning close so only she could hear. That the girl who stood here 2 months ago would never have believed this was possible. She would have thought it was a cruel dream. And now? Seren smiled, feeling her wolf settle contentedly beneath her skin, feeling the bond pulse warm and strong between her heart and his. She looked at the faces around her. Some who had mocked her, some who had feared her, all of whom now looked at her with something new in their eyes: respect, hope, wonder. Now I know that the impossible is just the possible waiting to be claimed. Theron kissed her then in front of the entire realm, and somewhere in the Silvervale Grove, the spirits of 1,000 silver wolves lifted their heads and howled their joy at the rising moon. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. A big thank you to everyone who is following. Your support truly means the world to me, Dasha.